Hello everyone, Carol Garrison with Carol's Creative Escape. It is time for another Thursday tip, and tonight I am going to focus on expanding your label punches. And when I say expanding, I'm specifically talking about making them bigger than what you initially punch out. I'm going to just demonstrate with the Banners Pick-a-Punch right now. This is a punch that gives you 6 different sized labels or banners with one punch. And basically it's very simple, straightforward to get the different sizes. I like to always flip over to make sure that I have it centered and punch down. And so here I've got this beautiful punch going this direction. I can make a little arrow out of it, and I have it exactly the length that I want it to be, just by changing the length of my paper. So here I can take a shorter piece of paper, again slide it in, make sure it's centered, and just like that I've got 2 different sized arrows, both in terms of width as well as length. And all I had to do to make this particular punch work is really adjust the width and the length of my paper. Unfortunately, with some of our other stamps, it's not, or punches, excuse me, it's not quite that easy to do because the punch isn't designed that way. So what I'm going to do is show you a few tricks on ways you can expand or change the shape of some of the punches that we have available to you. So the next punch I want to show you is this tailored tag punch. And this is my go-to. I use this one a lot. And so what I want to show you is how to create, when you punch this one out. Let me just grab another piece of cardstock real quick. This is the shape of your punch. Easy, straightforward. You've got the points, the straight edges. But maybe you want to go with a shape more like this. So all you need to do is take a piece that is narrower than the widest point of the punch. In this case, we are looking at approximately 1 3/8 of an inch at the widest point. So what I did was cut a piece of cardstock that was narrower than that. I'm using 1 1/4 because what I want to eliminate are these 2 points. So I just figured out where I wanted it, and I can center it in the punch. I will gently press down sometimes when I'm lining up just to hold it in place until I'm sure I've got it exactly where I want to have it. That looks pretty even, and I can punch it out. And real easily then you get a slightly different shape of your punch. So you've just changed how this punch is going to work. Another favorite trick of mine when I'm using my punches is I like to layer. I really do like to layer, and you'll see that in my cards. I don't go oftentimes for tons of embellishments, but I like to layer the punches that I use. So a quick example of how you would do that is to take 2 of this punch, and I just cut the colored cardstock that I'm going to have in the back. I cut it in half. I usually just use my paper snips because it doesn't have to be perfect. And then after I've stamped my greeting on my basic white, I will come in with my tape adhesive. And when I'm doing this, I will usually run my tape, oops, that wasn't good. I will usually run my adhesive on the back of the basic white cardstock. And what I do is just get that adhesive there, flip it over, and get it lined up so that my image is pretty even on the base, or not my image, but my 2 pieces of cardstock are pretty even. And then I will come back and put that second piece of adhesive on here. And again, I always work, even though I put the adhesive on the back, I always do flip it around so that I have the visual of how I am lining things up. And now I've got a much bigger image with my layers, and yet I can still put my greeting on here and have a very attractive layered image for you to work with. So that's one way to use the tailored punch. You can do this, or you can slightly change the shape of the punch just by using a narrower piece of paper and eliminating the 2 points. So that is our tailored tag punch. All right, the next punch that I'm going to work with is the rectangular postage stamp punch. And when I first got this punch, I was excited just to see the shape, and I really like the postage stamp type border on this. So this is what this one looks like when it is punched out. I've put it on white so that you can see the postage stamp type markings around the edge of this. And this in and of itself creates a very nice layer. Because it's rectangular in shape, it's pretty easy to create a piece of the basic white cardstock that you can stamp your image on and have a nice layer in there. But what if I have a greeting that's a little bit longer? How can I handle that? And in this case, I don't want to punch out the side pieces with that. I just want it on the ends. So again, what I did was measure the width of this punch at the widest, and I actually find it's easier. I've kind of done this and have had to ballpark it. Find it easier if you punch it out, you can just measure. So in this case, we're looking at, again, about 1.25 inches. So I've cut a piece of cardstock that is closer to exactly 1.25 inches. That's not what I intended, I don't believe. This is actually 1 3/8, what punches out. And then the Night of Navy that I'm using is 1.25 inches. What this is going to do is allow me to slide this in and out. And what I really want to capture is just this postage edge on these 2 pieces of my cardstock. So instead of sliding it in like this, because if I do that, then obviously these ends are going to be punched, you're just going to slip it in through the top. You do have to work at it just a little bit to get it lined up, but you can slide it in, and I have it centered so that I'm sure I'm not going to catch my edges. Hopefully you can see that as I'm punching here. And then I just punch it out. And so here I've got my edge on there. Now this looks a little crooked because I didn't pay attention to that part when I put it in. So let's work on redoing that and just making sure that we have it lined up. And that's best done by kind of going off of both the side as well as where your paper lines up on the end of the punch. I think I did better with that one. And then again, I'm going to just repeat it and slip it in. And again, make sure I have it lined up and fairly even in there. And I can punch down. And now I've got a slightly longer rectangle shaped piece that just has the detail on the very end of my cardstock. So it just creates a slightly different looking stamp. It's also a longer piece of paper than what I can get if I just use the punch as it is set up. Now, one of the other ways I like to use this punch is to make just to use part of it. And by that, I mean I'm going to just punch a scrap piece of paper to get enough for whatever greeting that I want. And then I can take that greeting and layer it onto cardstock, layer it underneath the layer of cardstock. This is a little bit narrow, but let's say my card goes like that, so that I just have this little tag hanging out. I've done that with a couple of my other punches, and I'll show you a couple of finished cards in just a few minutes here that will show you how that looks. So just tucking it in, again, getting the key parts of this punch, which is the postage stamp edge, but only using a small portion of it for a small greeting. So I don't have to use it full-sized. So that's another example of a punch that you can use and change it up just a little bit. Now, the next one that I want to show you, and I'm flipping my catalog to make sure I'm giving you correct names, is the Everyday Label-A Punch. And this one I think has a lot of options to it in terms of how you use that. This is what it looks like when you punch it out. Got a couple different examples here. But what if I have a greeting that I want to use that's just a little bit longer. So again, I want to expand it. I've measured the width of this punch, and it's about 1.5 inches. So I'm going to take a piece of cardstock that is about a 1/16 of an inch narrower. You don't need to take a lot off to avoid the edges, so just a skosh. And again, I'm going to slide it in through the top, because if I go this way, I'm going to automatically punch both ends, and I really only want to catch one of them. So I'm going to slide it through. And since this isn't how the punches are made, you do have to work to make sure that you get it lined up into the grooves, and then make sure that it's in there straight. And I can punch it down. And then I'm going to repeat the process with the other end. And there you go. I've got now a longer punch. Again, it's more rectangular in shape, so I can cut out Whisper white cardstock or another color. I could even put designer series paper in there, stamp my image, and now I have a much longer space for a greeting. Typically, I want to just grab a stamp set. So for example, as this one is written out, I've got the Timeless Tulips. Maybe the image that I want to use is, if I have it go this way, I could use this particular greeting, and it would be centered in there. And so this is the one that says, "May the memories of yesterday comfort you today," and that looks really nice. Or let's just say I wanted to use one of the longer greetings in here, and that could be the Happy Easter, Happy Spring, Happy, Happy Everything. A little bit out of season, but it's got the length that I want, because this stamp is not going to fit in here very well. You run the risk of running off the edges and that type of thing, but I can place it in the center. I could adjust the length of this just a little bit so that it was more centered. Turn it upside right for us, and then you've got this stamp punched image that fits your stamp just by expanding it out a little bit. Okay. Those are a couple examples. I wanted to show you, here's another one using this particular punch where I've created the hello and have it mounted on cardstock, just so that you can see where I'm at with that. And I will show you a couple of cards that I made using one of the other punches. These are reflected retired cardstock at this point from the annual catalog, but it gives you an example of what I'm talking about. This is a card I made for a swap, and this is a card that I cased from Terry Gaines. Pretty much exactly as she had it made. I thought it was so beautiful, so I will give a shout out and a thank you to Terry Gaines for this one. But just the thinking of you on a slightly smaller piece of the punch, and it just layers so nicely when you do that, and yet you get the detail of the punch. So keep that in mind as you are working on coming up with greetings and ways to layer and decorate those greetings. All right, that is our everyday label punch. Now, sorry, I'm just trying to get that punch closed. The next punch I want to look at is Label Me Fancy. And again, I'm just going to show you how nicely this looks when it gets expanded. Here is what the punch looks like, but it's kind of narrow for some of our greetings. They may not fit on there very well. Just the length of it isn't super long. So let's say that I wanted to fit on the let's just say from the same stamp set that I wanted to use this particular, oops, I dropped my cardstock that I was using. One moment, please. Okay, let's just say I want to use this greeting. So the best way that I can measure it out is simply take the length of the greeting, and in this case it's about 2¼ inches, which is about, let's say, a ½ inch too short or longer than what I need for the punch. So I am going to start by creating my label. And again, I have it measured just slightly smaller than the width of this. Make sure I have it lined up. And then I can measure my greeting and get a ballpark idea of where I need to cut it. So if I go about 3, I'm going to go 3 1/8 inches because I want to make sure I have it long enough. So I will trim off using my cutter to, starting with this end because that is my finished end. I will go up to 3 1/8 and slide it through. And then I can come back and just slide. And I want to be careful not to push this too far through because I don't want to lose any more length than necessary. And so there, I've got that. And now I have a greeting that I can ink up. A little easier for me to stamp when I've got it upright. And it fits the length of what I had. If I were using this piece, let me just show you how it's going to stamp and how it doesn't fit. And so basically by going about a 1/2 inch longer than what I needed, I was able to get enough length to cover the whole stamp and not have to worry about stamping off the edges and still have a usable card front sized image for my stamp to go on. So that's just another way of expanding, and it really does change, I think, how stamps look. All right, that takes care of that punch. Just giving you a couple quick examples so that you can see how different things become. The last punch that I'm going to be using is the Label Me Pretty, Label Me Lovely punch. Sorry about that. And this one normally looks like this. And one of the cool features about this punch is it's got these straight edges. And so it kind of gives you an easy way to lengthen this punch just because of those edges being built in and being straight. So what I have done on this particular punch is I have measured edge to edge on the straight ones, and it measures at approximately 2 1/16. So if I cut this at 2 inches, it's going to give me the wiggle room that I need. And so again, I'm just going to slide in because I've already got those straight edges. I don't need to worry about those. I've kind of created those just by the edge of the paper that I've cut. I'm going to punch that out, and then I can slide it back in here and punch that end out. And now I've got a much longer version of this. Now these would be great for filling up the front of a card. I can also see this technique being used to expand for using in scrapbooking if you wanted to make some labels for that. And so just to give you an example, here is a piece that I punched out of the Pale Papaya, the new paper, and I wanted to use this The Good Things in Life Are Better With You greeting from the Tasteful Touches stamp set, but it did not fit the box that I had because, oops, goes this way. It's a lot narrower. And so what I did was create a slightly extended piece of paper, I kind of figured out what size I needed to fit my Whisper White or Basic White in there and created this layer. And then because I wanted to create another layer, that's where this piece of Mossy Meadow came in. So not only have I been able to stamp my image, but now I can create a layered image using my punches with different lengths and having it fit. So it's just a simple little trick to show you different things that we can do with our punches and get different lengths that we may need for what we're working on when it's not a simple punch like this where we can have our paper be however long we want it to be to fit into the punches. One last trick that I want to show you is if you're like me, especially when it comes to Whisper White, I like to save my scraps, but sometimes when I'm going to punch, you know how you go in and you try to get everything lined up and it just doesn't work because your paper's so small. Quick tip for you. All you need to do is take one of those other narrow pieces of cardstock that you're not sure what to do with, add a little bit of adhesive to the end, and I always even like to kind of use my finger to make it a little less sticky, and I just put it on the end of my scrap, and then I can slide it in. Let's see. We're going to slide it in this way so that I can get one of those half greetings. I can just slide it in, and now all I have to do is move it up and down with my little slider stick that I've created, and I can get my piece stamped out. And it doesn't matter if a little bit sticks on the back, you just peel it off. And then I usually just tear it off, and now I can use it again until this becomes too small for me to handle. So just a quick tip to be able to handle those little pieces of scrap that are perfect for punching, but not necessarily easy to get in and lined up with just your bare hands. I hope you found some of these tips helpful in expanding how you use your punches and creating different sizes using the same punch and getting different looks from that. If you like this video, please be sure to hit the like button down below. Subscribe to my YouTube channel would be greatly appreciated as well. And if you know of others out there that might be interested in learning a little bit more about how they can expand their punches, please be sure to share this video as well. Good night, everyone. Carol Garrison with Carol's Creative Escape. Have a good week. We'll see you next week for my next Thursday tip. Thank you.